Hi, my name is Monica Alford with Wildside Media, and I'm very excited to be inside Legacy Sessions today in Adams Morgan with a dear friend and also the co-founders of Immigrant Food. I'm with Taya and Peter, and I should caveat by saying, Peter, I hope we can be dear friends one day. I know I'm just getting to know you, but Taya is a dear friend and frequent collaborator, and I'm so excited to have you both in today. Thank you for being here.
It's so great
Thanks
to be here, Monica.
for inviting us.
Yeah, of course. So I would love it if you could each just do a quick description of your full God-given name, your other titles that go along with everything you do at Immigrant Food, and a little overview of all the different locations and fun pop-ups and spaces that you have before we dive into questions.
Sure. So I am Taya Ivanovic. I'm the co-founder of Immigrant Food. We started Immigrant Food in November 2019. Very good time to open a restaurant, 3 months before the pandemic. But we have since grown to 4 locations. We just opened our 4th location last week. And we're looking to grow the brand and continue opening more restaurants.
Wonderful.
And I'm Peter Schechter. I'm the other co-founder of Immigrant Food, and this is our first location outside of Washington, D.C. So we've crossed the bridge hopefully it's a bridge onto many, many more things.
I personally think that's great. Congratulations. I always tease people because I am based in Alexandria that it's crossing the river. It's not like going from Hoboken to Brooklyn, it can be pretty close. And given the ethos of your business, I think that it's really important to remember that we are a cultural melting pot in large part because of Northern Virginia and Montgomery County and the surrounding areas and all the diversity of the food in those areas. So I think Ballston is a great location for you guys. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we couldn't agree more. I think we always knew that we wanted to cross the river at some point, and we looked at a bunch of different sites in Arlington and Alexandria and Maryland as well, and we just landed on Ballston for a few reasons. I think the demographics work. It's a lot of young people, but at the same time, people living and working in the area, which you don't see a lot in D.C., but I think in Virginia you see more, and it's more of a European model.
Yep.
We're both Europeans, so I think we connected to that.
Yeah, it's the densest
Right.
neighborhood in the DMV.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
And then it just felt right. I mean, we visited the site and people were happy. I mean, we talked to people on the street and people were like, we're proud to live in Ballston, we're excited. And so we said, okay, this seems like the right spot for us.
that's good.
it sounds incredibly corny when we say it, but it is totally true. I mean, we walked down the street and we stopped people and said, do you live here? Do you like to live here? And without a single exception, everybody said, we love it here. This is a great neighborhood. This is fantastic. The diversity, the restaurants, the fact that we can walk to the office. I mean, it's really unbelievable how enthusiastic people are about Ballston.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sometimes you have to take the pulse, right, of the neighborhood
Right.
before you decide to lay down roots there. So that's smart. And can you walk us through your other locations for anyone who might not know?
Yeah, so our first location was right next to the White House, and that was very intentional. We wanted to send a message in a restaurant called Immigrant Food next to a White House administration that at the time believed that immigrants were rapists and, from mental institutions and all the other horrible things. So we wanted to set up a location right next to that seat of power and to send a message. Then we opened in 2021. We opened a location in Union Market, vibrant market. We're a small stall inside the market, so a small part of that great community. And then we opened in late 2021 at the Planet Word Museum, so on 13th and K Street. So that was at that time our biggest location. Had a full bar, so it was a little bit more of that kind of more upscale casual feel, still very casual. And then we opened now in Ballston in July, and that feels very much like the Planet Word location.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And there's one thing about our first location that we always like to say, which is, when we opened that location in the one block between 17th Street and 18th Street on Pennsylvania Avenue where we're located, there were 9 restaurants. After March 2020 and the pandemic, 3 survived.
Right.
And we were one of the 3, even though we were only 2.5 months old and nobody knew us and nobody was downtown anymore. It was a ghost city.
Right.
And somehow we survived, and we believe, if somebody says, well, why? I mean, I don't know exactly why, but I have a theory, which is we survived because of the social mission of what Immigrant Food stands for, that it believes in defending the vision of America as the immigrant land, the immigrant nation, the fundamental DNA of what America really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And also your food's absolutely delicious. I will just say that as a big fan. But you're absolutely right. And that was going to be my next question, is that if you could dig into a little bit, one, yes, I mean, look, I started a magazine, literally launched under a new name the same month that COVID happened, and ran that for almost 5 years. So I get it.
Right.
It's I always said it's like a barnacle on a ship. You know, you're like hanging on for dear life.
Right.
But clearly, it's because in both cases, but especially for the topic of this conversation, it speaks to the ethos and what you were providing for the community that was very much needed. And I know that no matter how wonderful the concept, no matter how many awards a chef could have, or how many interesting things you're doing in your kitchen, or your price point and being affordable, it's really hard to keep something alive post-pandemic in creative industries, including hospitality. It's a lot. So speaking to, digging a little deeper into why you think you've been so successful. I mean, I know everybody has challenges, but you've been able to expand, and clearly a lot of people are paying attention to everything you guys are doing. But also, what that ethos and really focusing on supporting the immigrant experience in America, especially through the lens of hospitality, like how that plays into everything you do at your different locations.
Right. I mean, we always say that immigrant food has two beating hearts, right? One is the gastronomy, like every restaurant. We try to serve delicious food, and thank you for the compliment. I mean, but the second beating heart, without which immigrant food would not exist, is the mission, the social mission of, as Peter was saying, defending the vision of America as the immigrant nation. And so we say we celebrate, we advocate, and we educate on behalf of immigrants. And all of that is sort of mixed into the business model, and that was the case since day one. I mean, I used to work in corporate social responsibility and impact investors, and a lot of the bigger companies, what they do is once they reach 1 million or 10 million or 100 million, then they say, okay, now I have a cause I believe in, and I want to donate part of my profits to it. And we did the reverse. I mean, we said from the start, we're going to have this dual mission and these two beating hearts, and that's how the company's going to grow. And we wanted to do that in very creative ways of integrating the mission into the model rather than saying, here's a percent and we're going to donate it to someone. And that's wonderful, and a lot of great companies do that, but we wanted to be really sort of creative and intentional about how we do that.
Yeah.
And then, there's two other additional factors. One which you always say, and I'm surprised you didn't say it, which is a restaurant is a non-threatening environment to talk about something which unfortunately, has become controversial,
Sure.
right? And so,
By a small minority, right?
by a small minority, but it's a very loud minority, and it's injected into the controversy of our political theater, and now we have a presidential election, and so we're hearing a lot about it. And so I think that coming from a restaurant, having these messages about how important it is, not only for the past of our country, but for the future of our country, that we remain the land of immigrants, is a way to talk about things that people are used to, the families getting around the table and talking about difficult subjects around the table. So why not have a restaurant talk about a difficult subject? And the other thing, which I think is just as important, is that from a food point of view, this nation, immigrants completely, without immigrants, there would be no restaurants. Whether it's from the picking of fruits, to the butchering of meats, to the transportation of any food product anywhere, to the serving of it, the cooking of it. I mean, it's an industry completely dominated by immigrants. And so it's in a way, this is an ode, it's a song to the immigrants that sort of are so fundamental to everything we eat, whether it's a Big Mac or the highest and most refined things in the most expensive restaurants.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I would also say, like, DC being considered a foodie city finally and getting acknowledged for that, which it should have a long time ago, has a lot to do with that diversity that we have.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the short order cooks or the front of house or the chefs, right? It's really amazing, and I think people don't see that until they spend time in the city.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. I think DC is an incredible city, and you're right. I don't understand why we haven't gotten the recognition that we deserve for many, many years. I mean, we have a huge Salvadorian population, huge Ethiopian population. Just the mix of peoples and foods and recipes and ingredients that they bring, and just creativity in general, I think is amazing.
Yeah.
Not only in food and culture
Right.
and theater
Absolutely.
and
Exactly.
song and music. I mean, I
Exactly.
think
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are giving me something to interview about, talk about, write about.
when I have friends who come from Europe tomorrow, two Italian friends are arriving. They're staying for 2 weeks, and the first time they came to DC, they said, "Well, we only came to DC because you're here. We wanted to see you, but DC's not that interesting." And then when they left, they said, "Wow, this is an amazing city. We're going to come back," and now they're back.
Yeah,
So
love that.
it's full of life. It's full of things to do, and it's now finally recovering a little bit from the shock of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
unfortunately become earlier than it used to be. You know, things are sort of died down earlier. But listen, let's fight that, and let's bring it back to a late night city.
I that is something I think about a lot. Yeah, that's one thing I think DC could do really well, is sort of that, like, you're in any neighborhood in New York and there's still art galleries, or people are taking their, I mean, not like New Orleans leaving with their glass of wine into another gallery, but you just go in and you're having wine and there's DJs playing, and then there's a amazing restaurant right on the corner, and maybe you have to wait a few minutes, but it's not like a wait list and impossible to get in. I think DC could benefit from a little bit more of that, because there's a lot of young creatives here that are hungry, both literally and figuratively, for connection and good food. So we'll work on that together. Maybe we can.
Perfect.
Yeah. We'll write a letter to somebody. We'll have our people call their
Well, let's
people.
do
or
something
something.
late at night.
Yeah,
and let's
exactly.
Invite,
There
let's
you go.
invite friends.
There we go. This is how collaborations happen, 100%. So, speaking about just other things that you're doing to support the community, I know that there are some summer events that potentially you can share with us, and maybe some things, in the works that you can tease a little bit. But I'd love to learn a little bit more about how folks can engage with both of you and your immigrant food community, besides just dining at your locations.
Yes, I mean, one of the things that we do in terms of the mission is we have an engagement menu. So every week we put out 5 ways that you as a guest, when you come in, you can engage with the community. And so it's right next to the food and the drinks menu, right? So you order something to drink, something to eat, and you can engage with the community, whether it's volunteering or sending a petition or listening to a podcast or whatever, going to an event that's going on in your neighborhood. And that's something we put out on social media, in our newsletter, in the restaurants, and it's very easy to engage. You just follow us on Instagram, which is @immigrantfood. You sign up for our newsletter at immigrantfood.com. And then we do lots of other ways that you can really become part of the community with us and around us, and all of that is on social media, on our newsletter as well, on our website. And we do lots of different events. So one of the things that we have coming up is we have an annual immigrant comedy night, which is always super fun. It's always at the end of August. This year it's August 22nd. At our White House location, we just spread on the patio and have a great time, bring amazing comedians, amazing creatives that are local around here. And we always partner with Kama DC, which is an amazing NGO organization that's highlighting artists in the area, immigrants and refugees. So we're gonna have that this year, and we're super excited about it.
I love that. So is it like open mic kind of format, or
It's not. It's actually 5 comedians that come in.
from different
And
countries?
different
Yeah,
countries,
each of the
yeah.
comedians came to the United States from different places.
Right,
so.
great.
And so they share their stories. But an open mic might be an interesting idea for a different night. too.
No, I mean, that's fabulous. So do you feel like, I'm sure they invite their own communities out, but do you feel like you get a good cross-section of folks that are representative of those individual comedians, like Home Country? And
Absolutely.
Yeah, that must be fun for them.
Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
really
Yeah.
really fun. I mean, 4 years ago, we did our first one, and it was sort of trying to see, can we get enough diversity? But then it's become very easy every year, because we get a lot of comedians who want to be part of it, and we work with our partners, Kama, and so we create a really cool list of comedians that are there.
Very fun. And you said that's August 28th?
August 22nd.
22nd. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Awesome. Any other end of summer events or?
Not events, but we
have
have
a
some
couple
things
of-
in the works for the fall.
Couple
yeah.
of speaker series that we
Nice.
want to do that sort of follow a little bit about what are the sort of big issues in immigration today, sort of particularly both from policy but also from a humanitarian point of view. So we're inviting a number of prominent individuals to sort of talk. Also, we'll use the patio at 1701 near the White House. As a platform for that. So people come to dinner and we invite them, and then they listen to a lecture. We recently had a professor who from the Wharton School who published this groundbreaking book about immigrants and a lot of the myths that are being sort of bandied about right now about immigrants and how each of those myths is incorrect and what the truth about immigration is. And I think that's the title of the book, right? The Truth About Immigration,
right? Exactly.
Right.
I love that. So what is kind of the current rhythm or cadence you have for the frequency of these different types of programming, and how often would you like to have them? Like, what would be an ideal?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we do it. I think all in all, we get to about 8 events a year right now. I think the ideal cadence would be doing something every month, and that's what we're sort of working towards, is having like, oh, we'll do it every third Thursday of the month, or et cetera. And so we're trying to build a team that can actually create that with us and do that starting next year. So that's something we're working on.
So Tay and I used to have a podcast together on on global affairs issues. And we worked with a producer whose name is Annie Kemmerer, and she left the country for a while, but now she's come back, and so we've convinced her to be our advocacy coordinator to help us sort of get to exactly that. That's why we were laughing with your question. We want to get to exactly a cadence of at least once a month doing different types of events, one cultural, one serious, one about sort of real people. And so we really different types of events that sort of hit on various topics in immigration.
So Annie, we'll talk about it on Monday.
I was going to say, I mean, I know this company, this media outlet that does a lot of like live storytelling and panel discussions and a podcast studio that's really great. Kidding, but I'm so excited to chat with you guys about ways we can support, because I think that's amazing.
That's
and
great.
I've been, I mean, obviously this is a very important topic. It's always timely. It's always timely in DC, but always especially timely with the upcoming election. But also, I just have found in a post-COVID world, so much of what I've done that's more in journalistic spaces, and we've talked about this, is you can only write about somebody or interview them so many times, then you have to bring it out into the community and continue to champion people or provide voices, spaces for people to share their voice or amplify their voice where they haven't had that opportunity. And so these more intimate, under 100 people conversations where people feel really heard and seen, and there's people like them that they might be hearing from, or they can ask questions afterwards. I think it's really important. And people are hungry for connection and validation and understanding. And a lot of what you do is very aspirational, and in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion. So that was going to be my next question, is if, like, learning a little bit about how you two started working together, how this all came about. And quite frankly, I don't know, at least in DC, a lot of co-founders or co-owners that, one, have an age difference, two,
well, I'm a lot younger, but I feel respected by my partner.
Obviously, but also that I had 9 out of 15 Rammy nominees from 3 different categories in this studio over the course of a week recently, and 3 of them won. Actually, I interviewed one from each category that actually won the night of. So that was kind of fun, because I actually got to have these kinds of conversations, and and they were not the shiniest, hippest categories. They were like the we roll up our sleeves and get shit done categories. And I was like, yeah, because we had these really cool moments. But in every case, most of them were women. And most of the interviewees really had a strong opinion about just feeling like they constantly have to fight, whether we're talking about a wage gap, whether we're talking about being a woman and also a woman of color or a queer woman. And not that they didn't always feel supported by their male counterparts, but rarely were they in a leadership role at the level that you are, much less in a co-leadership role. So I think that's pretty unique. It shouldn't be at this point in time, but it is. And so, I'd like to learn a little bit about your dynamic in general and how this came to be. Your very, very tiny age difference, obviously, with her being a few years older than you, but also just, working in a way where you respect and hear each other, but also champion the fact that you have Forbes 30 under 30, and just this powerhouse person. I shouldn't have to say powerhouse woman, but really that you've accomplished so much and been so supported by both your co-founder and the community. Like, that's huge. Like, you need to. I say this to you a lot, I know, but like, you need to own that and be so proud of it, because we're so proud of you, and I'm sure you're so proud of her. So that's the end of my love letter. But
keep going, please. This is great.
but I really just would love to learn a little bit more about that dynamic and what it feels like to kind of work in what I think is a unique working relationship as leaders in hospitality.
I don't know who should start.
I think you should start. Continue the love letter.
Youngest goes first.
Yes.
Well, I mean, look, it is admittedly sort of we're an odd business partnership. There's no doubt about it. First of all, I don't even know a lot of business partnerships of men and women.
Yeah.
And sort of men and women of different generations. Let's not talk about age. Of different generations is even rarer. So, look, let's begin with I'm the father of 2 daughters, and I believe in. I've always respected and admired, but preferred strong women around me. My mother was also a strong woman, and so I've been sort of completely lucky to have found somebody. I mean, we joke, we did an interview once and said, she's the wisdom and I'm the cool. But talking seriously, the ability to be able to find somebody with whom we can talk rationally, but also play off each other and understand things that I probably wouldn't be able to understand. Perhaps I have a sort of longer term vision than Teo would have, but I mean, it's rare to find a partnership that works as well, and in which sort of I've been lucky to have a person that sort of has, and unfortunately I've told her this, which is I've rarely found, some people are good at strategy and seeing what's around the next corner. Some people are good at sort of the tactical implementation of how do I get from point A to point B. Rarely do you find somebody who's good at both. And Teo's good at both. And this is sort of an enormous pleasure to work with somebody who has the ability to see far, but also know how to get to that far place by each milestone along the way. And it's a huge asset that we have, and it's a huge asset that I have to be able to work with somebody like that.
Wow, you guys. I mean, I had a rough day. I'm feeling a lot better now.
You can leave now.
No, I mean, this is something I think about a lot, and I think we've talked about it too, Monica, which is that I think if you're a woman in business, any business, certainly hospitality, but I think also in the creative space, there's just not a lot of us, right? And I think you get, you get overt sexism, but I think the part that I'm most annoyed with is the kind of covert sexism that you deal with, and the sexism that people don't even realize that they do, right? Kind of the way they see you, and the way, like, I mean, I'll be standing with my operations director who I hired, and guests will come up to him and thank him for an incredible meal, an incredible experience, not knowing that, I'm the owner and he's an incredible part of the business, but I am the owner, right? And so those ways that, I mean, we've had so many interviews where people turn their chair towards Peter and sort of pretend I'm not even there. Obviously, they were not hired. But, those ways that, and I think Peter is very sensitive to that and really has, I think, even over the years also, like, seen it and really supported me in that. And that's been invaluable. And I think having men and women, I think just having champions around you that really support you in that and really see you for who you are and not for the young woman or the woman that you are, I think is incredibly important. And that has really helped me also with my confidence, right? I think sort of that can really put you down very easily, right? When you deal with this kind of day in, day out and the prejudice and all that stuff, I think it's difficult. But I think having someone like Peter who's really sort of looks beyond that and has really been able to support me, and just someone that I feel like is my peer, even though, of course, Peter has so much more experience than I do, and I learn from him every day. I think just feeling that we're equals in this partnership has been incredible for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's amazing how we bounce things off each other and bring perspective. I mean, and there are times when I sort of flame out in this business, right? I've been in the personal service industry for God knows how many decades, and before I used to be a consultant and had my own business, and restaurants are trying sometimes, right? I mean, there is no more detail-oriented business than restaurants because it requires details on the incoming ingredients, details on the outgoing ingredients, details as how you describe those ingredients, communications details, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a great details person. I'm one of those that I described earlier as I'm very good on seeing around the curve. Getting there, I'm less good at, let's say. But I think it's amazing how, I flame out and Taya's able to say, calm me down, and I do the same for her, because we're in a trying business in an extremely trying time for that business.
Yeah.
And so it's been very good to sort of play off each other and to be able to sort of really talk about sort of how do we get to the next place in ways that sort of we bring different perspectives. I want to say one other thing about some of the covert things that you felt. I mean, I feel it's having a partner that is substantially younger than I am. It's not only about sexism. It is really there is an age issue here that when people see my gray hair, there's an immediate assumption that sort of, well, I must be the boss, right? And it's really it's quite amazing to watch, right? I mean, it's there's a gravitational presumption. It's like the moon cannot separate from the earth, right? I mean, there's a gravitational presumption that a young, and particularly a young woman, but a young person cannot be the leader.
Right.
And it's something, I mean, first of all, it's something you have to fight against. Sometimes you just have to get beyond it. You just pay no attention. And I tell Tay that. Don't pay any attention. I mean, the next time they want something from you, they'll have to go to you. I mean, so they'll figure out who's the leader. If they didn't figure it out this time, they'll figure it out the next time.
Right, that's a very good point. I apologize for my voice a little bit, but I was just thinking about, I did actually a panel that, it was the SheDC panel this year, that we switched up the format a little bit, but I'd asked Taya to be the moderator. It was last year, I think, right? It feels like longer ago.
Yeah, it does.
A lot's happened in the past year or so.
Right.
Just a little bit of change. But it basically, it's on women in business, and this year we called it intersectionality in business. And I brought in panelists who sat with the audience, and I specifically chose to not invite anybody who's in my friend group. I was like, you guys can't come. Like, this has to be for people who don't know anyone that's speaking on this panel or moderating. And I wanted millennials and Gen Zers, and the Gen Zers to learn from the panelists and say, walk away with like tangible toolkit. How do I apply for a grant? How do I, as a young, person of color, a young woman, find myself on the Culture Caucus for the Kennedy Center, or trying to apply for a leadership role in a neighborhood bid, all these different things. And one of the questions that came up, and the panelist is queer and BIPOC and has tons of experience working on the Hill and is very well respected, and a content ambassador, has a huge following, but as a baby face, and is a woman and is queer and queer presenting. So also, like, if you're not femme in certain spaces, right, as a woman, and how people react to that when we're still in a buttoned up town. And the question was, she was asking the other panelists, not even the Gen Zers in the audience, how do I get a seat at the table, or like a space in that room? Like, how do I get doors to open? And all of us in different ways were like, we're still figuring that out too. It doesn't matter what the case may be. But I think it's really interesting. I think that's such an asset, actually, for you two to be able to have that, because then you can be like, actually, I'm the co-founder, or you can be like, you should ask Taya, because that's her crowdfunding campaign idea. I don't know if that's true, but that's my next question, so we can talk about that, queuing it up. But you know what I mean? But like, you have the ability to kind of, in real time, make people really think about what they're saying and the assumptions they're making, because there's you're in it together, and you can kind of set that straight, versus, some people just walking in a room wouldn't even get to that point, because that person wouldn't come up and ask them a question, because they'd just go, oh, they look too young to be the owner, or they're blue-haired, I don't know who that person is, or whatever the case might be. So, but I think that is a really important point, and I think you should use that as an asset and a strength, and kind of not call people out on it, but to the extent that you can set the record straight. And also, I'm a big believer in not putting people in their place, but just sort of being like, hey, respectfully, like, you actually got that one wrong, and maybe you'll think differently next time. The next time you see a beautiful young woman and whether or not she's next to a distinguished gray-haired business partner or not, just ask questions before you just make assumptions. So I think that's actually kind of a superpower that you can wield when you want to, or when it makes sense. I don't know. That's just a thought, but
Yeah, I think so. And I think when, people ask us sort of how do we divide our, our time and how do we work and who takes on what? And we really share a lot of the work we share. I mean, it's not like I only do financials or he only does, compliance, whatever. We kind of share a lot of the things. I mean, yes, we have inherent strengths and things. And it's sort of, we naturally gravitate towards certain areas that we take on. But I think we've also become very good over the years, speaking of this topic, which is playing the person, not playing the zone. Meaning that, if there's a contractor who will sort of only respond to Peter because he's a man, we just use that, right? And so, Peter will handle that, and I'll handle where they only want to deal with me because I'm a young woman and because they feel like they can, get a better deal or whatever it is.
Sure.
And I'm happy to deal with that. So I think we've also gotten very good at sort of dividing our time that way.
Because if somebody who is selling us something says, no, I want the young woman because she'll be easier, they have no idea what's coming.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
Right? I'm the pushover, right? In this partnership, I'm the easy one, right? So
But you should mess with people, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
You should be like, you go to the contractors,
Right.
and then they're like, oh gosh, who am I dealing with right now? This is not what I expected, But
Yeah, but the contract the negotiation phase is already over.
Ah,
right?
okay, yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, you got to keep people guessing and also change the perception and the status quo. Okay, now let's talk about the crowdfunding campaign. I know this has been in the works for several months, and when does it end, or when is the?
So it ends August 12th.
Okay, great. Wow, we're close. Okay.
Very close.
Yeah.
Very close. We started back in March. Is it now? I think April. That's right. Yeah. We started in April. It's been a long time in the works. I mean, restaurants typically the way we fundraise, we all raise money is through friends and family often. Or debt, of course, but in terms of equity. And so we often go to friends and family and ask for a check of, $100,000. And, not a lot of people have that kind of money laying around to invest in restaurants. So we really wanted to make it, given our mission and given that we want to be part of a community, we also wanted to open it up for the community to actually be a stakeholder, if they choose to, in our company and in our growth. And especially also for our employees, and that was very important for us. And so in the crowdfunding campaign, the minimum investment is $500. So, again, it makes it more accessible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And including our staff. And that's been really incredible for us to see is we also did sort of a matching contribution where if they invest up to a certain point, we match 50% of that investment so that a lot of our staff can feel like they can become a restaurant owner, which is not something that is often accessible. And we've been just amazed at the response. I mean, we've raised $800,000 from a lot of these kind of smaller to some, medium-sized investments, and we've just been, very touched by the community.
That's wonderful. So this is actually timely. I've been speaking with it's a bar, but hospitality still, about reopening their doors and being transparent about when you're raising money, when you're asking for the community for any kind of support, whether a lot of it is, for the friends and family or the folks that can invest in a business, but, if somebody can just donate $500, like what is your goal once you've raised the full amount in terms of how to share with the community and just the general public, how that money is going to be allocated and what your plans are for it?
Well, we have a business plan that we've had from the very beginning, and our first investors, we explained it to them, and when it was a concept, before we had any single space, right?
Sure.
So, and the business plan is to try to grow this company to somewhere between 10 and 15 locations in 2 to 3 cities, and then we would need a sort of large infusion of probably institutional money, either to buy us out or to propel us forward to another 30 or 40 locations. And at that point, that's where the quote-unquote exit would come for our investors. And the crowdfunding investors that we are now getting have exactly the same opportunities as the first investors that we got. Basically, we are all, Tay and I are investors in this company as well, and so we all will make money if our business plan goes according to plan, and we do open 10 to 12, 15 restaurants in 2 or 3 cities. And then we're very convinced that this concept is an attractive concept that really is different than a lot of other concepts, and that we'll be able to sort of find people to invest money either to buy us out or to propel us forward. But at that point, the investor group, whether the new start engine crowdfunding investors or the old investors who came in at the beginning, would all have an exit and have their money back.
Right, because importantly,
And
it's not.
with hopefully a lot of extra profit.
Sure.
And importantly, I mean, it's not a donation, right? Like you get shares in a company, just like if you were to buy, on the stock market, you buy in, you get shares, and those shares you get, hopefully, like Peter was saying, if all goes according to our plan, we sell, you get, your money according to your percentage ownership of the company.
That's great.
That's the idea.
Love that. Do you have ideal cities that you would like to expand to?
I mean, that's always a fun conversation, which you should join sometime around with wine and great friends and kind of talking about where we would go. I mean, I think this concept could work in a lot of cities, not everywhere, but I think in a lot of places it could. One of the states that we love is North Carolina. I think what's interesting because of the demographics that are going on, the psychographics, the politics as well, of course, and we like the idea of the research triangle and having maybe one in each of the cities of the triangle. Charlotte's very interesting. Asheville is very interesting. And if not North Carolina, we like Georgia as well. Atlanta is also a great place to expand. So I think there's plenty of options. I mean, I think we're still a couple of years away from that, but it's always a fun conversation.
We don't have the gauzy dream of opening in New York City.
Right.
I mean, that's I think both because of our mission. New York City doesn't need convincing that immigrants are an important factor for our country. I mean, you walk down the street of New York and you hear 70 languages on one block. I think it would be a much more interesting concept in other places.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know how I like that term gauzy, that adjective, but I don't know how gauzy New York is anymore. I mean, I feel like I was just singing its praises for being able to bop around to art galleries and find a quality place without a wait list. However, I love that you picked not only the South and the Deep South, but the Research Triangle, because there are a lot of, the amount of people have told me that Charlotte's a hip city and they're thinking about moving there in the past year, and I'm like, interesting. And I would definitely say about Asheville, but, I think there's a lot of smaller cities and big towns that are doing really interesting things where they are being put on the foodie map or the cultural map in some way. And so it's not even like being a big fish in a small pond, it's just more helping shape and change the culture of a city that's starting to really lean into these important things.
Somebody told me that Louisville, Kentucky was Airbnb's most successful city per capita.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Actually, my partner's from Kentucky, and we were talking to someone about that recently, and he could not stop laughing because that's, when undergrad, he's like, what? That's where I went, but it's changed. That was a long time ago.
Right.
Also, I appreciate an age difference. We have one of those too. But yeah, I think it really is being put on the map in a different way. He was just in Detroit actually, and I think there's a lot of cool.
Absolutely.
There is.
I don't know, cool industrial cities that are being revitalized.
Well, we share a friend from Pittsburgh who keeps
I was just about to say
wanting to take us
Pittsburgh.
to Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
Oh my
You guys
goodness.
need to come to Pittsburgh with me. I'll show you around, and you'll be convinced that that's your next
great.
city.
I was literally just about to say that, and I was with a friend before who's we're both big Andy Warhol fans, but we also I realized he was a difficult personality. But I mean, the Warhol Museum and all the cool art there, and the pierogies. Oh, it's a cool town.
Yeah.
It's a cool town. But no, that's really exciting. Well, I would love to join one of those dinners and
You're welcome anytime.
yeah, that's really exciting. So back to Ballston, just because I know this is brand new, and you just opened last week, right?
That's right. We just opened in mid-July, and this is week 2, and so I mean, we can't tell you a lot of lessons learned. I mean, from 1 week, but. But
Food's good.
Food's good. It's beautiful, we think.
It's beautiful.
And this is the interior, right?
This is the interior, exactly. So
Lots
we've
of
used the same architect that we worked with, Michelle Bove of Design Case, who's incredible and has designed our other restaurants. And so we looked for the same kind of vibe, like the kind of, I don't know, just relaxing and inviting, welcoming space. Similar, rugs that we have, not on this picture, but I think a lot of the same textures and colors. But it's our biggest location yet. The bar is in the middle of the restaurant, smack in the middle. We have these big windows that open. I think it's a really fun place to hang out.
There's one of the like our location at the Planet Word Museum. We're very lucky so far. I mean, and I know that we're a business, so we will end up with commercial landlords. But so far, we're very lucky with our landlords. So, one landlord is the Planet Word Museum, in which we created the restaurant to really as an ode to authors who were born elsewhere but came to the United States and became famous in the United States. So our bar is inlaid with book jackets of authors that came to the U.S. and created a name. This restaurant is in the global headquarters of the Nature Conservancy, and they also sort of really were looking for a mission-oriented restaurant company to fill the space that had been vacated prior to the pandemic. So you'll see all the plants, and we used a lot of sustainable materials in building it. So it's also a great partnership.
Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah, I think it's the amount of detail. Talking about detail that goes into the architecture, the design, the art of a space is really unseen by the naked eye, really, but by so many people.
Right.
And that's a really cool story too. I hope you have. If you haven't told that already in detail, you should, because sustainability is something I think a lot of people in DC are paying more attention to now, which they should. Anything else about Ballston that's particularly unique or that you're excited about, or is it just that you're finally crossing the river and acknowledging that Arlington's not that far from DC?
That's right. No, I'm the first one to acknowledge it, and I have a Vespa, so that's how I get around town.
That's so cool.
But you're not the only one.
I know, it's you too, Peter, but I was speaking
What color
for
are your
myself.
Vespas, though?
Mine is mint green.
Of course.
And mine is sort of metallic. Silver, gray, metallic gray.
All right, this tracks. Okay, I'm big on color palettes. I'm like, okay, that's your aura. Got it. Cool. All right. Sorry, but you were saying you
No. So I get around very easily. So it's literally 12 minutes from my house, and it's great. I mean, it's very easy to get to, and it doesn't feel that far. And I think a lot of people have that mental kind of wall between us and DC and Arlington or Virginia, and I don't think that's necessary at all. But one thing I just wanted to mention is that we're really excited. Like I was saying, the space is so inviting and fun to hang out. So I'm really excited, like when we open the windows, have a glass like of wine or like a cocktail at the bar and just sit and hang out with friends. And we have a specialty cocktail that is also an ode to our landlord. So it's called the Kanha cocktail, and it's named after a reserve in central India. And the Nature Conservancy does a lot of work in India. And so we wanted to sort of create this super green, fun cocktail that is really an ode to their work and sort of what we're doing with them.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm out of questions, except is there anything else that you have coming up or any other ways that folks can engage with you or support other than going to, potentially...
Come check us out,
Yeah, check out your locations and the crowdfunding campaign before August 12th, right?
That's
the end
right.
of it?
Yep.
Yeah, but anything else you want to plug or share or... Just
follow us on social media. You'll get a sort of all of the events that we do, and join us at one of the events and try it out.
Yeah.
Cool, wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, cool.